Now, before I start, I'd like to give special thanks to these, as though without any of them, none of this would be possible or worth the while. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Imperator David Griffin, Leslie McQuaid, you here in attendance here, and you throughout the cyber world. Now, I would like to preclude my presentation with a very strong word of caution. Some of these things I am about to show you and talk about might be offensive to some of you. The material I will cover may be contrary to some of the basic, fundamental truths you hold dear and base your reality on. And I'm sorry, Dave, even if you are sweaty palms here next to me, I think everything will be fine. This warning is necessary because some of these subjects are often taken as blasphemy. So be forewarned. If in doubt, perhaps you should get up now. Skip this lecture. Judge me as you desire, a heretic if need be. Indeed, of going through better than a full meltdown later. Thank you. Now, the rites of coming, or those sometimes called the rites of spring, are directly connected to those of the rites of passing, or sometimes called the rites of harvest or fall. Not many, but all people from every corner of the earth have these rites. Since the Stone Age, every society has had their own rites of bringing forth and sending, of invocation and evocation. These rites have taken many forms to describe the one truth. For there is no spring without an autumn, no dawn without a dusk, and no coming forth without also going. There are many examples, as those of us here who have participated in this grand celebration have seen. Special mention needs to be given to the Bardo Thadal, otherwise known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. For it is an accumulation of thousands of years of in-depth study into the becoming and passing phases of pre, now, and post realities of existence. It is believed that if one remembers the Bardo, one can stop the cycle or pause it, or cause it to spring forth from one Bardo to another. Such level of existence. So it is customary and traditional to Tibetan belief to read out loud the Bardo Thadal to the deceased so that they too can remember their meditations on it, that thereby, with its focus and memory, it is believed that the original essence of the individual is retained, and one can consciously choose to stay or go through the Bardo as one chooses. As a side note, I find it intriguing that some individuals are so in tune with the Bardo that when the soul gently leaves the body in focus, on rare occasions, there is a phenomena called a rainbow body. That is what happens when the soul becomes a finer essence. It goes back into meditating with the original body of light meditations that it had when it was incarnate. And as it's leaving its body, the room fills with this glow, and that is often described as a rainbow glow of body. And often this glow is seen springing forth out of the building from where the body lays. Also, more very notable and more coincidentally very similar is the Her, otherwise known as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or the Book of Coming Forth by Day, and also the book of emerging into the light. While it focuses not so much on the pre nor the now, it goes into great detail length describing different levels of existence in the hereafter and their ruling gods, demons, each with their own trials. And one must figure out or be stuck there, or worse yet, devoured by the god therein. They too believe that by simply remembering, one could, in essence, opt out of dissolving into nothing and losing memory of the self, and instead go into fro and fro, and some evolving memory of who one is. Both the Tibetan and the Egyptian accounts are an accumulation of in-depth study by countless monks, priests, over thousands and thousands of years, of which there are many good books out there. What these all have, and all other rites of spring, in common from every corner of the earth, especially where the seasons are more fluctuating. Here in common, we have practices that through tradition have brought through preserved and morphed symbols for a time of harvest and purification that is like specifically of their autumn. In other words, that represents a sacrifice of old so that a new spring may come forth. So, what do they all teach us? Well, let me tell you, unless if you let go of the illusion of old, we will miss our very own springing or coming forth into the more real, or at least a little less smeared with a few less illusions. In order to look at these with the eyes of a magi, we must first take a look back in time and journey together at what led to the needs and of every culture and every society the world has known to create a way better to manipulate the human experience. Taking a little drink here, excuse me. If we go back far enough, when the humanoids that were our forefathers gathered for more than just procreation, a need for order was created. So there became a king. This individual was responsible not only to keep order in the group, but was also responsible to control the weather, seasons, all the natural and supernatural. The king of sorts oftentimes was held liable for the well-being of the group at the peril of his life and his progeny. So for the king's best interest, there had to be developed a system to try and control the forces that surrounded the experience that made up social prehistoric life. He or she, as the case may be, had to find a way to conquer not just people, but the unfolding events of reality. From this, as a direct natural result of the inception of magic, religion was born. Now, based on the type of magic and that was primarily practiced, whether homeopathic, which uses the law of similarity, or contagious, which uses the law of contact, it would determine the type of religion that was going to be sprung forth. So let me use an illustration for both. If I wanted to bless or curse, I would set the intention in motion as action. In this and every dimension I can muster in my magi experience and wisdom to use symbols to represent such. Then, if homeopathic, for example, it would take the form of me using imagery that is similar as to represent the desired outcome. Whereas, if contagious, it is by a having had a direct contact to the subject, or part of it, like a lock of their hair, or a personal item of significance, or just simply by being in the presence of, to provoke a desired outcome. Through these forms of manipulation, whether real or imaginary, the king and his rulers utilized whatever form necessary to manipulate the public, the rain, the sun, and the wind. These were necessary to forego the pains of having some suffer more so that a few can have and have the burden to rule others. So the necessity of a king and queens to be magicians led to another inception, that of the necessity of these to have the right and power to do so as human incarnations of gods. In other words, they were, or at least play acting, they were gods themselves. As this came to be, the concept of spirit became more and more important. It was a vehicle to conduct as to the spiritual road, or in other words, consequences to one's choices. Thus, the taboo evolved. In each time and place, it manifested as to develop for its people the values of a people. So what does this all mean? Well, that depends on your perspective. That is, why and what may taboo be for one may not necessarily be for another. So let's take a sincere look at our own selves and from where one's own perspectives, values, taboos really come from. Perhaps we too need to shed some of our own preconceptions in order to have a clearer view of reality. So too must we see that as candidates, initiates, we must shed the misconceptions that have been handed down to us, sometimes erroneously. For in the rites of spring and coming cannot come anyone who is not willing to shed the misconceptions they have held on to so tightly. One must be willing to see the light. As an example, it is a very common misconception that magic could be black or white. For me, no offense or disrespect intended, magic is like a hammer. It is simply a tool for the magi. So, if you take a hammer and show it to somebody who's never seen a hammer before, it could be quite a wonder. And if this person who's never seen a hammer before sees you take a hammer and use it to put together a house, this person might imagine that this thing that you call a hammer, this magical device that puts homes and furniture together and that is so useful, is a very sacred and holy, perhaps white, magical device. But now, if we take this very same hammer and we were to instead drive a nail through somebody's head with it, and somebody, once again, didn't know what the heck a hammer was, would very likely think a hammer is a very wicked tool. So I propose that perhaps it is not the hammer that is black or white, or maybe not even the hammering itself, which sometimes people propose as intention. But it goes beyond that. Perhaps that of doing one's true will as opposed to free will. But that's a lecture for another time. But before I conclude ours all getting hammered today from leftovers from last night, I would like to share a little exercise for us all to conduct. Excuse me, I didn't intend my Easter pictures to be showing up here. Or last night's pictures either. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'd like to share a small meditative exercise that I have learned to use for over 40 years now, that is very simple, and it doesn't really require much experience for anyone, and can almost be done anywhere as long as you can close your eyes. That is, don't be driving. And so if you're doing something that you need to have your eyes open, please do not participate with this exercise at this moment. But you can refer back to the recordings, and you can go back to the exercise at a future date. But for those of us who have the luxury, take some time and perhaps sit down, or if you need to, lay down and take a moment and make yourself comfortable. Now take a deep breath and inhale. And as you inhale the peace and the love and tranquility that surrounds you. Now you exhale, and you exhale your tension and your worry and all the things that have distracted you to have to do or not do. Then you inhale again, and you inhale some more beautiful green air that makes you feel so calm and peaceful. And you exhale again. And as you concentrate on your breathing in and out, you focus and calm yourself in your mind and your body. You relax yourselves from head to toe of all the stresses that you've had. And as you quiet your mind, you begin to focus on a candle, a light. And this light sometimes for some of us a little bit dimmer and for some of us a little bit brighter. But we like to focus on the light because it shows us direction. It brings us to a certain point. And we focus on this light. And I'd like to bring you to this light here and now. Come with me. I want you to see and imagine a candle before you. And it's beautifully sitting still. It's not flickering. It is calm. It is as calm as your mind. And when your mind flickers with distractions of the pains or the distractions of the mind, so too does this candle flicker, and you shall see it flicker, and then you will remind yourself to bring the flame to a calm. And as you bring the flame to a calming, burning, you focus your attention on the very summit of the flame, the very pinnacle of the very steady flame. As you focus on it, you will notice that it is infinitely smaller and smaller. And as you focus this focus of intention, you can see things, you can hear things, you can feel things that I promise you, you will have not likely have had experience before, unless if, of course, you're David Griffin or Leslie McQuaid. But my dear brothers and sisters, I share with you my light, and now experience whenever you wish this peace and this love of this light. As you gain experience and you gain adeptship in learning this exercise, it will become easier for you, where quantity of exercise will no longer be as important as the quality of the focus on that summit and the focus of the purpose of why you want to be a better person. Now let's come back together and give thanks to the great light, the great architect that has created us all, and give thanks for the many great gifts that it has brought and is bringing and will bring. And let's come back and bring our consciousness and our focus back into our breathing, back into our body, back into our feeling our arms and legs, and once again, giving thanks for all the many blessings that we have had. I thank you so much once again, brothers and sisters. David Griffin, Leslie McQuaid, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, I thank you, and I sign off. God bless.
So we will now be taking a 15-minute break here at MagickAll 2016. Don't go away, because we're coming right back. Zaina Moonflower will be here talking about the magic of food. Yeah, that's right. You may not have thought about it, but even for a magician, what we take inside us is very important. That's in 15 minutes from now.